Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today, we are covering Sirach chapters 4 through 7.
Yeah, you did it this time.
Yeah, this time.
You didn't call it Atheist Sunday School.
I did not. That is not a thing that I did this time.
Well, we have a copy of Sirach here.
Yes, and we are still waiting on the other one. And the other one is the one from the Anchor Bible Commentary. It's the same series that we use for 1st and 2nd Maccabees.
All right, but this one is the Wisdom of Ben Sira, Ecclesiasticus, from the Society for Promoting Christian Knowledge. It was translated by W.O.E. Osterley, D.D.
Yeah, and we actually have referenced him before, I think, in the first episode of this. We did actually reference him.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is the 4th one. They do Roman numerals for the chapter headings in this version.
Yeah, we know how much you love Roman numerals.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of these where it has Roman numerals, and then directly next to it, it has real numbers.
Real? You mean Arabic numerals?
No, I mean real numbers.
And
they're on the number line.
Lots of books do that.
Yeah, and it's like obnoxious.
I agree that it is obnoxious, yeah.
But in any case, why don't we hop into it?
Well,
besides that book, we also have...
Yes, we have Erdman's commentary right here, this big, beautiful one that's open. And also, open directly behind it, is the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think any of these other Bibles have Sirach or anything about it.
No, not really.
But we also have the Oxford Companion to the Bible.
We do have that.
And we already read the Old Testament survey bit.
We did.
Yep.
So honestly, we can hop right into the reading.
Yep. This is chapter 4, Kindness to the Poor and Afflicted. This one has also chapter headings.
That's nice.
Yeah. They're all bolded and everything. My son, mock not at the life of the poor, and grieve not the eyes of the bitter in spirit.
So the Hebrew text of verse 1 has mock, la'ag, instead of defraud, as in the Greek text, recalling Proverbs 17:5. Those who mock the poor insult their maker. And then cross-reference Proverbs 14:31. Those who oppress the poor insult their maker.
Which, of course, if you're watching Atheist Sunday School, we're covering Proverbs.
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
It lines up so well.
Yeah, almost like we planned this, but we didn't.
Almost.
The soul that is in want causes not to sigh, or cause not to sigh. It's not a descriptive; it's a prescriptive. Right? And vex not the heart of the oppressed. The inward parts of the poor grieve not, and withhold not a gift from the afflicted. Despise not the supplication of the poor, and turn thyself not from the broken in spirit. From him that asketh, turn not away thy eye, and give him no cause to curse thee. There's a...
All right, man.
yeah, I just had a thing. Oof. There's a footnote. It says the Hebrew is wanting here, apparently.
Yeah, there are definitely a good bit of verses that are obscure. In fact, if you see a question mark, it means that the translation is uncertain.
They also have little G's and H's for like Greek and Hebrew on the sides, which it doesn't seem to add much of value.
It will definitely later on. There are a few verses that we will be covering today that were in Greek manuscripts, but not in Hebrew ones.
All right. Yeah, I see later on there's like a GH jumping between them. Okay. When the bitter in spirit crieth in the anguish of his soul, his rock hearkened unto the voice of his cry. There's a footnote. The Greek reads, he that formed him. But according to whoever this is, W-O-E Osterley, his rock is a preferable reading.
Yeah, and also the mention there of crying out and just cry in general. That was a huge part of the liturgical tradition. And in fact, the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary mentions Exodus 22:23 for an example of that.
All right. And of course, his rock being throughout Psalms.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah. Make thyself beloved in the assembly, and bow thy head to the city elders. Incline thine ear to the afflicted, and respond to his greeting with humility. I assume these elders are like the people who hold the position of elders, not just the old people.
Yeah.
Save the oppressed from his oppressors, and let not thy spirit show contempt in a righteous cause.
So Ben Sira's reference to rescuing the oppressed recalls similar advice from Lemuel's mother in Proverbs 31:8-9, which we will get to. For royal ideology demanded that kings rescue the needy. This idea seldom found expression in actual practice. Most kings occupied themselves with military ventures aimed at securing or improving their political situation.
All right. Be as a father to orphans, and in place of a husband to widows. Then God will call thee his son, and be gracious unto thee, and save thee from destruction. Literally the pit.
Okay, so another reference to Sheol then.
Right. Even though there's nothing that suggests that God saves you from going to Sheol.
Well, I mean, he would be the only one that would have that capability.
He would, but I mean, even Abel was in Sheol, in Enoch. I mean,
yeah,
who's not going
That's
to
true.
Sheol? I don't get it. We're going into
until the end times. That is, if you follow.
That's right.
the
Part of
traditions.
Sheol gets to go to the new heaven, and the new heaven goes somewhere else. I remember that.
Yeah, there's the new heaven and the new Jerusalem. Yeah, the new earth altogether.
But you need the righteous one.
You do.
Or the righteous ones, or the righteous one.
Yeah, either one is fine, or either ones are fine.
Yep. We're going into a different subsection of this chapter. The reward of those who seek wisdom. Wisdom teacheth her children, and taketh hold of all that give heed to her.
So one thing to note about this entire section, there are alternating third and first person pronouns. The Greek text lacks this particular feature, describing wisdom throughout in third person. Yeah, but apparently it alternates in the Hebrew.
All right. And who are the children of wisdom? Is that just any human being? Is it Israel?
It's living things, I think. I remember that being brought up before.
Is it all living things?
Yeah, all living things have wisdom. Remember, we read that in Sunday school.
Well, they need wisdom.
Yeah, they need wisdom.
Oh, they don't have it?
This is wisdom teacheth her children.
Yeah, so
That's
I'm
not
guessing
just
it's students.
people who have wisdom.
I'm guessing it's students.
Maybe.
Or just anyone who searches for wisdom.
Well, we were talking about like a symbol of education in Israel at some point during Proverbs. So maybe teaching the children is that.
Apparently here, the Hebrew and Syriac texts in verse 11, which I assume you just read that one,
Yes.
have a different verb to teach, as if to emphasize the stage of learning rather than the end result of respect among peers. There's also a pun on the two consonants. There is Bet and Nun, I think. Those are the right letters, I think. That's that tells you from all the Hebrew I know.
B and N.
Yeah. So yeah, Bet and Nun occurs in the Hebrew words for sons and their activity. Her sons, Baneha and Mebenim, a participle from the verb bin, to understand. The NRSV's her children captures the wider sense of the expression Baneha, although in the context of the classroom, it had the more restricted meaning of sons and students.
All right. They that love her love life, and they that seek her shall obtain grace from the Lord. They that take hold of her shall find glory from the Lord, and they shall abide in the glory of the Lord. They that serve her serve the Holy One, and God loveth them that love her. He that hearkeneth unto me shall judge in truth, and he that giveth ear unto me shall dwell in my innermost chamber. Ooh. Well,
I'm guessing that means in...
Sacred place.
Well, yeah, but it would be, if you remember, the tabernacle, the innermost chamber, the Holy of Holies.
yeah.
Yeah, and only a select few people could go in there.
But I find it odd. God loveth them that love her, right? Now, this is very different than the God we are familiar with, because God outright says, I am a jealous God.
Yes.
None other before me.
But remember, wisdom, I'm guessing, is kind of from as far as we can tell in the theological framework, is kind of emanated from God.
Well, it depends on the book.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
We've had conflictions on that already.
Yeah.
But either way, the personification is definitely a literary device.
It's definitely a literary device, but I mean, this isn't the first time that this has popped up, where they first personify wisdom, and then they associate an almost religious reverence towards wisdom, and they go on to say that if you have that basically religious reverence towards wisdom, then God shows favor to you.
Yeah, and it's not like an actual worship of wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
It's you're not building statues.
Exactly, yeah.
But you are revering it. And I'm not sure if that's in line with what's written in the Torah.
I think it would be just easy to say that God wants you to be wise.
It would be. That's not what they do. All right, let's keep going. He that hearkeneth unto me shall judge in truth, and he that giveth ear unto me shall dwell in my innermost chamber. If thou trust her, thou shalt inherit her, and his generations shall be in possession of her. Verse 16 is not extant in Hebrew.
Yeah.
The rendering of Sirach, which is to be preferred, runs, if he trusts me, he shall inherit me, and he shall possess me on behalf of all the generations of the age.
Yeah, so, this verse is lacking in the Hebrew, the Greek text, which turned the idea of faithfulness in verse 15 into an entirely different notion and meant truth to nations. Now introduces faithfulness. In doing so, it promises an inheritance to those who remain loyal to wisdom, extending the legacy to their descendants. That inheritance consists of personified wisdom, who freely bestows herself and all accompanying blessings on faithful lovers. Because the Hebrew of this verse is not extant, we cannot tell whether the language was intended to invoke ancient sentiment connected with the divine promise that Israel constituted Yahweh's private possession.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, it's a bit like the promise that Yahweh continually gives to people.
Dynastic.
Yeah,
the dynastic promises. Well, there's a dynastic promise, but there are multiple dynastic promises. Let's be real.
Yeah. There's the important one to David, and then they're the smaller ones.
Yeah. Now we're back in Hebrew. For I will disguise myself and walk with him, and at first I will try him with temptations. Now we're in Greek, still in verse 17. Fear and dread will she bring upon him. The Sirach reads, I. And also this line doesn't exist in Hebrew. And now we're back in the Hebrew. And I will chastise him with scourges until his heart is filled with me. Now we're back in the Greek. And she will try him with her ordinances. This line doesn't occur in Hebrew or Syriac. It's probably a gloss.
Yeah. So which verse is that specifically?
That was the last part of verse 17. Verse 17 here jumps between Hebrew, Greek, Hebrew, Greek.
Sure. So the note here is on trials specifically. There have been a lot of trials, right? Like if you talk about Abraham and Isaac, and then in the New Testament you get the Jesus stuff.
Yeah.
And
and going into the wilderness and temptations.
Yeah, all that good stuff. The difficult experiences in classrooms probably inspired this talk about trials. For the life of students included numerous unpleasantries ranging from harsh whippings, and I absolutely love this, how hilarious this is, ranging from harsh whippings on one side to painful thinking on the other. So unpleasant.
I have to think.
The latter included tedious memorization of texts, extensive practice of calligraphy, copious recitations, and rigorous thinking, all at the expense of frivolity and fun with persons of the opposite sex.
Oof.
No fun for you.
It's a bit like doing a bar mitzvah. Someday,
Yeah.
Lawrence.
I don't think so.
Someday.
I doubt it.
Oh, not only that, I'm going to make you do the Hajj, too. Then I will lead him on again and will reveal to him my hidden things. If he turn from me, I will forsake him and deliver him to the spoilers. Now we're in another subsection of chapter 4, words of guidance. My son, observe times and seasons and...
What verse actually are you on?
20.
Okay.
My son, observe times and seasons, and fear evil, and concerning thyself be not ashamed. Okay, times and seasons. This is, astronomy, but astrology
Sure,
was a major thing back then. Observing the times and seasons was part of that. Is this an advocation of astrology?
I don't think so specifically.
No, it's just, I'm guessing it's to remain vigilant of the time and season because of the dangers it may present.
Yes. That's pretty much it. And not just the specific time and season, like, the way we think of seasons. It's more of just like be observant, of the changing social conditions, stuff like that.
But
The times.
Yeah, the times. Not,
Well,
not
there-
like your watch or something.
like
they didn't have a watch, not like their sundial.
New York Times.
in Proverbs, there's like a more agricultural sense, which I haven't really seen as much in Sirach. I feel like that line would fit in more with like the agricultural ideas that they put forward in Proverbs, right?
I mean, you're right, it would.
All right. So, and concerning thyself, be not ashamed, for there is shame that bringeth iniquity, and there is shame that bringeth glory and grace.
Yeah, so a good and a bad kind of shame.
Mhm. Respect no man to thy own hurt, and be not ashamed when it is to thy stumbling. Withhold not a word in season, and hide not thy wisdom. That's in contrast to, I think, what we read last time in Proverbs, where they said that the wise man doesn't like talk about all of his stuff, right?
Which verse is that?
That's verse 23.
Verse 23. Man, you're just hopping so quickly through this stuff. Like, seriously, I'm trying to follow along here, and the thing is, probably because, that's an older translation, it's difficult to know exactly where you are because the wording is so different.
Mm-hmm. You don't normally have that problem with the KJV?
No.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, right?
I suppose apocryphal stuff would have higher dissonance.
Yeah, there's probably less people working on them. I mean, we can't exactly ask W.O.E. Osterley about this.
No, not exactly.
This was written in 1916.
Yeah, so he is very much dead.
But if he had kids, they might have kids that are around.
Maybe.
But yeah, you remember that, right? Where they were talking about how wise people don't talk about their wisdom as much.
Yeah.
And here they are explicitly told not to hide their wisdom.
Yeah.
For by speech is wisdom known, and understanding by the tongue's utterance. I'm at verse 25 now.
Okay, so the tongue's utterances.
Yeah, basically, you can only know how wise someone is based off of what they say.
Okay, yeah. I was because at the end of the section, there's going to be something about double-tongued speech.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to make sure I would not miss that.
Mm-hmm. Speak not against God, but be humble towards God. Be not ashamed to confess sin, and stand not against the stream. Given that a lot of sins are punishable by death, I think it's rational to be ashamed of confessing sin.
So there is actually something to say about the stream, or the river, as it is in modern translations. So the image of an overflowing river occurs in Isaiah 8 with reference to Assyria's might. An Egyptian proverb about the impossibility of concealing a river appears several times, attesting the popularity of such thinking. And then Erdmann's notes on this, on the whole river thing. Stopping the current of a river seems a strange thing to do. A similar phrase occurs in the Syriac proverbs of Ahikar. Struggling against a forceful flow of water is applied to trying to do the impossible.
All right.
Yeah.
Do not humiliate thyself in the presence of a fool, and show no respect to the oppressor. Strive for the right until death, and the Lord will fight for thee. There's a bit in the New Testament where Jesus is like, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Mm-hmm. That sounds like showing respect to an oppressor to me.
Yeah.
Jesus must not be that wise. Didn't possess that feminine wisdom. All right. Strive for the right until death.
There is an actual note on this.
Yeah.
So in traditional Jewish thought of Old Testament times, wealth had been thought of as God's reward for piety. We can always look at, Job, for example, which challenges that. Yeah. By Sirach's time, Hellenization had brought riches to a part of the population of Israel. This situation is illustrated by chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. In such conditions, it is all too easy to rely on one's newfound wealth, a warning equally relevant to all situations of sudden prosperity, even today. And of course, I think that that same kind of thought, did that come up in Proverbs, or was that last week on in Sirach?
I think
it was last
both.
Week.
I think both, genuinely. I could be wrong.
We were talking about wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even remember, because these are both wisdom texts, and they're kind of similar, honestly.
They're very similar.
Yeah.
It's hard.
We hadn't had any female versions of wisdom previous to these texts.
Well, yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, they're pretty similar in that regard, for sure.
They have similar. I mean, I wouldn't say they're similar in style, but they're similar in themes.
Mhm.
They are similar, genre, and of course, as you mentioned, Chris, they have the personified wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe these books came about around the same time.
Well,
I don't know. I wasn't there.
me neither.
Certainly, they add access to the same type of base literature that inspired it, or were inspired by a similar motif.
Yeah, my guess is that Ben Sirach was in part motivated by Proverbs.
Yeah, well, a
That's my
lot of
guess.
the language is like directly pulled from Proverbs.
Yeah.
All right. Strive for the right until death, and the Lord will fight for thee. Be not boastful with thy tongue, nor careless or negligent in thy work. Be not like a lion in thine house, nor tyrannous or terrible to thy servants. Slaves, right?
Yeah.
Let not thy hand be stretched out to take, and closed in the time of giving back.
So a hypothetical situation in Deuteronomy 15:7-8 mentions the same concept of an open and a closed hand. The idea persists into the early 2nd century. For example, in the Didac 4:5 in the Epistle of Barnabas 19:9, where the expression is exactly the same in Greek. Be not one who stretches out his hands to receive, but shuts them when it comes to giving.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of chapter 4. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, subscribe, comment, buy us stuff on our Amazon wish list.
And share and stuff too.
Yeah, share it. Share it with your friends, family, and neighbors. Put it in a glass bottle. Print off a URL link. Yeah, roll it up.
Why
Put
not
it
write
in a
it
glass
down?
Well, you can write it down.
All right.
You have good handwriting.
If you have good handwriting. If you have bad penmanship, no doing that.
No, don't do it.
Put it in a glass bottle. Throw it in the ocean.
Someone will get it, maybe.
Yeah, someone will get it.
Like,
Maybe.
we gotta look this up.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you pulled a glass bottle out of the ocean and there was a piece of paper in it with a URL on it,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
I'd
sure
go to
you
it.
would look it up.
absolutely. So one thing before we get into the next chapter, actually, while we are exchanging books, I have not only finished the script for the canonization of First Enoch in
Excellent.
the Ethiopian church. I have also recorded the audio, and I have already started editing it. So hopefully next week, maybe Monday, hopefully Tuesday, you will have the canonization of First Enoch video.
Excellent.
It's about 20 minutes long.
About,
Yeah, a little bit over. It's like 21 minutes.
you want for me to look over that for you, or is it good
It's
as it is?
Yeah, it's good.
He's proud.
All right.
I am so proud. Anyways,
All right. Yeah, Eerdmans is broken up very strangely.
isn't it?
Yeah, but there's a bit about this chapter before we get into the verses proper.
Sure.
In the NIB Volume 6 commentary, it says, the author of the profound prayer in Proverbs 30, 7-9, knew that wealthy people face a special temptation to rely on their own resources rather than trusting in God. Ben Sira also recognizes this danger, but he links it to certain additional attitudes that deny divine sovereignty. These attitudes fall into the category of theodicy, for they assert that God does not really punish evil people. In this brief section on theodicy, Ben Sira takes up at least 3 arguments that sinners often use in defense of their presumption.
Yeah, so theodicy, in more broader context, is just the whole, they're just trying to solve the problem of evil, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and their presumption with regard to God's mercy. 1, acquired wealth proves divine favor. 2, expected retribution for sin has not fallen. And 3, God's readiness to forgive gives one ample time to repent. The language of this entire section assumes a combative posture, an authoritative figure using negative commands or prohibitions, e.g., do not.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, unless there's a bit in the oddly broken up Eerdmans section,
I don't think there is.
we're going to run into double tongue speech in this chapter.
Or that might be, yeah, in this chapter. All right. So, chapter 5, wealth is a false security. That's the heading. Trust not in thy wealth, and say not, I have power. Trust not in thy wealth, to walk after the desire of thy soul.
So the Hebrew word for wealth, chayil, implies vigor. Hence, it fits nicely into a context of self-reliance. The pregnant expression is matched by an idiom for control over one's destiny. There is power in my hand.
And the textual note here is that these two lines are obviously doublets. They are omitted in Greek, and Sirach has the first and last lines of the verse.
Mm-hmm.
Go not after the desire of thine heart and of thine eyes, to walk after the desires of thy soul. Say not, who hath power over me? For the Lord avengeth the persecuted. So it's don't be greedy, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are bragging about it, God doesn't like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly why I'm tempted to just sock somebody in the face during one-upmanship. I'm just so tempted. I'm like, can you stop?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm tempted to kick them in the face during one-upmanship.
You've got it worse.
Either way, let's continue here. Now we're going into the next subsection, starting at verse 4. Yep. Say not, I have sinned, and what happened unto me? For the Lord is long-suffering. I think there should be a note on that, but I think the general idea is of patience. Like you'll get yours eventually, and this hypothetical person that they are talking about, this boastful person, is basically going, well, it's like, I've been evil, and look how great I'm doing.
It says the expression "God is long-suffering," elarek apayim hu, echoes the liturgical confession in Exodus 34, 6-7. In this instance, the divine patience. Apparently also in this verse, there's an image of a long nose. It says the image long of nose suggests that God's anger does not flare up quickly, but requires considerable provocation.
And that's in the verse 4?
Yeah, it says it's under 5:4. It also says that there's a comparison with Ecclesiastes 8:11. But I don't see where the comparison is.
Yeah, and remember, this is a kind of old translation. I'm sure that, since then they've revised it quite a bit.
Well, they're referencing the NRSV.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
Or the NIB, which they should be referencing, not the NRSV. Why this person's referencing the NRSV and an NIB?
Because it's a very standard Bible.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Just like when they reference the KJV or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So either way, apparently in a more modern translation, there's something about a long nose.
Apparently.
Yeah. And that's why I'm hoping to get the Anchor Bible commentary soon, because you'd think that they would have something like that or a note on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Count not upon forgiveness by adding sin to sin. And I think there there's definitely a note on that. I remember going over that.
So it says the third presumptive attitude concerns God's readiness to forgive. According to this opinion, The scope of one's sins does not really matter so long as they are atoned for by sacrifice and good works. Thinking forgiveness in a light manner, the sinner freely indulges, multiplying iniquity. Ben Sira warns against this kind of overconfidence, which trusts in Yahweh's compassionate nature to forgive an abundance of sin.
So, yeah, it's kind of directed at the people who apologize for things that they do, but then continue in those actions.
And it's also kind of hearkening back to the fact that you mentioned who would admit their sins if they get in trouble for them, to God, not necessarily to anyone else. So I think that's a big difference.
Well, there's a bit more here. It says the Apostle Paul combats a similar view in Romans 6:1. It seems that some Christians argued that the greater the sin, the more copiously God's forgiveness manifests itself. Such reasoning provides a dubious justification for continuing in a state of rebellion.
Wait a second.
Indeed.
All right.
So you're saying if we rebel real hard, God will forgive more readily?
No.
Oh,
but
the opposite.
yes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Really, he seems like a stickler.
But apparently Paul was arguing against people that did believe that.
The Mishnah offers evidence of similar presumption, warning against thinking that one can sin and ask forgiveness only to repeat the offense. The rabbi responsible for this saying believed that for such persons, the Day of Atonement had no efficacy.
Yeah, it's just not like if this person is forgiven for all this stuff, like then it is meaningless.
Yeah.
Especially if they're just going to go off and do it again. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And say not, his mercies are great. He will forgive the multitude of my sins. For mercy and wrath are with him, and upon the wicked doth his anger abide. Delay not to turn unto him, and put it not off from day to day. For suddenly doth his indignation come forth, and in the time of his vengeance thou wilt perish.
What verse is that?
That's verse 7. I just finished.
All right.
Told you, it moves quickly.
Yeah, it does.
Trust not in unrighteous gains, for they profit nothing in the day of wrath. And it's very interesting, the inclusion there of that verse, because it feels like it belongs to the subsection before on money, like on wealth, right?
Yeah. So
like I get what they're getting at, but the phrasing, you know what I'm saying, sounds like it's more at home earlier.
right.
Like it does make sense, don't get me wrong. So even if you are sinning all this stuff and God hasn't,
Smite.
Yeah, he hasn't smitten you yet or smited you yet, whatever. It's going to come eventually. So I get what they're saying.
Right, because eventually the dead will rise and inherit the earth, and
Yeah.
so on
yeah.
and so on. Right? They literally believe in zombies, people. So verses 1-8 bracket presumptuous thoughts within over-reliance on wealth. Ben Sira warns against ill-placed confidence, one based in faulty reasoning about delayed punishment. Both mercy and wrath belong to God, he insists, and one should act accordingly.
All right, next section here, starting at verse 9.
Yeah, there's a little bit before you get into it.
Sure.
Two images from popular Proverbs in 5:9 provide a fitting translation to a new theme that evokes a triple use of the idiom master of two with reference to duplicity in speech. The remarks about winnowing indiscriminately, regardless of the direction of the wind, and trying out various paths apply equally well to the preceding discussion of different attitudes to retribution as they do what follows. Another widespread expression, to put the hand to the mouth, indicates humility and respect in the presence of greatness, perhaps also the lack of an adequate response. This symbolic gesture is mentioned in Job 21:5, 29:9, 44, And elsewhere in the Old Testament, Proverbs 30:32, Micah 7:16, and I guess Wisdom 8:12.
Wisdom of Solomon, yeah.
Yeah. Not the Wisdom of Ben Sira.
No.
Like so much in wisdom literature, it also appears in Egyptian texts.
So the first one you mentioned there, winnow not with every wind, and walk not in every path.
Mhm.
Be steadfast in regard to thy knowledge, and let thy speech be consistent. And then this is kind of setting up the whole double talk thing.
Mhm.
Be swift in hearing, but slow in replying. So that's an idea that we've definitely seen before in Proverbs, I think, about thinking about the stuff you're gonna say.
Mhm.
Think about things before you say them. That's just good advice.
Yeah, this whole section is about speech, basically.
If thou canst, answer thy neighbor, but if not, hand on mouth. That's the end of the show.
Ooh,
That's not the end of the show.
oh, no. No, it's not.
But it does say, but if not, hand on mouth. So, translations, man.
Hilarious.
Now, maybe the put your hand on your mouth, like some words are only
Or-
implied in
Yeah.
the original source.
Ah, guys,
Yeah.
this is one of the first memes. Hand on mouth.
Glory.
Phrasing intended.
Glory and dishonor come through speaking, and the tongue of a man bringeth his fall. Be not called master of two tongues, and slander not with thy tongue, because for the thief hath shame. Oh, yeah, this is going to make more sense if I say it this way. Because for the thief hath shame been created, and sore reproach for master two tongues.
So this two-tongued thing, the double-tongued person resembles a thief in robbing innocent people of their good reputation. Just as speech with integrity brings honor in its wake, so also deceitful remarks cause shame. The purpose of such duplicity is described in the language of hunting, lying in wait. Thus, the double-tongued person lays a trap for the unwary. Sirach clearly felt strongly about double-tongued speech, as this is from Eerdmans now, as the term occurs 3 times in as many verses, 5:14, 5:15, and 6:1.
Mm-hmm.
Speech is a responsible matter since it can bring about people's downfall. The images in verse 14 are all too familiar. Double-tongued, meaning saying different things to different people maliciously. Laying traps down with your tongue can easily lead to your downfall.
Hey, Ruben, Lawrence said you suck. Hey, Lawrence, Ruben said you suck.
What?
Fucking, you gotta die now.
I'm gonna get you.
Ooh.
Come at me, brother.
Yeah.
And one last verse here. Be it a small or a great matter, deal not corruptly therein. And that is the end of chapter 5.
If you're enjoying the stream so far, like, share, do what you gotta do.
And also 6:1 is just kind of like the end of this section here.
Yeah, it's also in here. They include it.
Ah, they do. Yeah, I see that.
So 6:1. And be not an enemy in place of a friend. An evil name, reproach, and shame wouldst thou get. For thus it is with the evil master of two tongues. Or master two tongues.
Yeah, Master Two Tongues.
That's his name, Master Two Tongue.
Okay,
Coming at you.
you ever see Kung Pao?
I haven't seen it, but I think you have played like clips of it.
Yeah, well, the main character, he's the chosen one because on his tongue, there's like a face. There's like 2 eyes and a mouth
It's his
in the
birthmark or
tongue.
something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the sign that he's the chosen one. And
Amazing.
like he sticks his tongue out and it starts talking, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Sirach. Self-control. Fall not into the power of thy soul,
Yeah.
i.e., be a slave not to thy be not a slave to thy passions.
So the subject of this short unit probably falls into the realm of sexual misconduct.
Yes, this is on self-control.
Mm-hmm.
Lest thou consume thy strength. It will devour thy leaf and destroy thy fruit, and will leave thee as a dried up tree.
Wow.
This is all referring directly to penises.
Yeah. For unbridled passion destroyeth the possessor thereof, and maketh him the joy of his enemy.
So according to Anderson's interpretation of Sima as a rabbinic cipher for legitimate sex within marriage, Ben Sira's choice of this noun to indicate enemies, to indicate enemies' happiness, is especially fortuitous.
All right. We're in another subsection now.
Mm.
Friendship, true and false. Kindly speech.
Friendship,
It's the best thing ever.
except for best friendship,
It's even better.
you mean a lot
I
better.
mean, a lot better.
There you go.
Yep. Kindly speech maketh many friends, and gracious lips multiply those that give greeting. Let those that are at peace with thee be many, but thy confident one in 1,000. 1 in 1,000.
Yeah, so the this section on the value of faithful friends is the first of several in the book dealing with a subject that was widely discussed in Hellenistic literature of the time. Jack T. Sanders has examined the affinities between this advice from Ben Sira and similar counsel in the similar counsel in Theognis's I don't even know that word, but his poems of book 1 and Phoebus.
What, his poems?
Yeah,
Okay, we're reading poetry now?
Sure.
no, but he's talking about
Okay.
similar advice. Another name for papyrus and singer. Sanders' analysis demonstrates extensive cross-fertilization of ideas throughout the Greek world. Popular philosophers wandered from town to town and taught anyone who would listen to their ideas, and merchants traveled from port to port and inland, exchanging both goods and concepts.
Once more, that sophists would travel from town to town, charging people to get lessons from them on how to talk.
It's true.
Ben Sira's frequent use of lover instead of the usual word for friend probably betrays an unconscious influence from the Greek world. Nevertheless, two expressions clearly mark this advice as authentically Hebraic. The language of greeting, to ask about one's well-being, characterizes genuine friendship, according to verse 5. In verse 16, the image of the soul's residing in a protective vessel, the bag of the living, recalls ancient folklore from 1 Samuel 25:29. Abigail's rhetorical flourish about divine protection for David. Although the expression 1 in 1,000 occurs in Job 9:3 and Ecclesiastes 7:28, it also appears in Egyptian wisdom literature and thus cannot be considered exclusively Hebraic.
All right. And as was previously noted, there's a lot that appears in Egyptian literature.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let's continue.
And tell me when you get to verse 16.
All right, I'm at verse 7 now.
Okay.
When thou makest a friend, test him, literally acquire him by testing.
Well, yeah, like tests of friendship.
Mm.
I'm guessing it's not like a trial,
Oh, but it is.
like it is before.
Yeah, they've got like
But
a
make
pit
sure
of
you-
coals that they have to run over.
This will test your loyalty to me.
Yep. And be in no hurry to trust him, for there is a friend who is a time server, and he continueth not in the day of trouble. And there is a friend who is turned into an enemy, and he revealeth strife to thy reproach. And there is a friend who is a table friend, who is not to be found in the evil day.
A table friend.
When you sit at a table with, perhaps.
In thy prosperity he will be like thee, and will lord it over thy servants. Amended text on the basis of Greek. The Hebrew text is corrupt.
Verse
That's verse 11.
11, okay.
But if evil overtake thee, he will turn against thee, and will hide himself from thee. Separate thyself from thine enemies, and as to thy friends, be on thy guard. A faithful friend is a strong defense, and he that findeth such findeth a treasure. A faithful friend is beyond price, and there is no weighing of his goodness. A bundle of life, see 1 Samuel 25:29.
Oh, yes. So we just cited that, actually.
Yes.
So the Greek text of verse 16 changes the image of a bag of the living, which the translator probably did not understand, or he considered bundle, bag, a mistake for sori, to an expression compatible with Hellenistic thought. The resulting statement, a faithful friend, is a medicine of life. Okay, so that's further, another translation illustrates the way changes occur whenever texts are translated into a language with entirely different concepts and images. So there was an idiom that was not understood. But yeah, it says...
That's the biggest thing here is these cultural disconnects over this long period of time and all the references to things that are even older. Boy, does that make it harder.
Yeah, so the text, according to the NIB, is a bag of the living.
All right. A bundle of life, or a bag of the living, is a faithful friend. He that feareth God obtaineth him. He that feareth the Lord directeth his friendship aright. This line's missing in Hebrew. And as he is, so is his friend. Now we're going into another subsection, the search for wisdom, which continues, I think to the end of the chapter.
So the realization that even intimate friends sometimes change into enemies does not give Ben Sira a jaundiced view of friendship. The ease which a wisdom teacher could move over into suspicion of all relationships can be seen in the instruction of the Egyptian name. Hold on. Amenemhet. Trust not a brother, know not a friend, make no intimates, it is worthless.
Wow, that's like
very,
amazing.
Very nihilistic. Yes, it's pretty great.
Yep. Or, as the wisdom literature of today says, never trust a hoe. The search for wisdom.
Oh, that's so 2008.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or 2009. When did that song come out?
I don't know. It came out long enough ago that I remember it.
And disliked it.
Yeah. Verse 18. My son, from thy youth up choose instruction, and thou wilt find wisdom even unto the time of gray hairs.
So
this verse is missing in Hebrew.
Yeah, I was going to note that the Hebrew of verse 18 is lacking in manuscript A, and only the last two words appear in manuscript C. For verses 23 through 24, the Hebrew has 27, 5 through 6, and verses 26 and 34 are completely missing. In verse 19, the twin images of plowing and sowing are broken up in the Hebrew, but not in the Greek. And unlikely sowing and reaping occur in Hebrew. The context calling only for the preparatory stage of planting. This brief unit demonstrates the difficulty of determining precisely what the original Hebrew text of Sirach actually included. Often, as here, insufficient clues exist to enable interpreters to decide which option comes closer to the autograph. So yeah, lots of weird textual issues between the manuscripts.
All right. We're about to reach a whole section that isn't in Hebrew. But we'll get to it. As the plowman and the reaper draw nigh unto her, and hope for the abundance of her fruits. For in cultivating her thou toilest but a little, and tomorrow thou shalt eat her fruits.
So for ancient peoples, the metaphor of plowing and sowing often functioned as a euphemism for sexual relations. And a woman was described as a fruitful field to be plowed by her husband.
Oh my gosh. So that really takes us back. How long have we been calling it plowing?
Yeah, a long time.
Jeez.
Yeah. This widespread metaphor, familiar to readers of the Samson narrative.
And everyone else.
Everyone else, yeah. In which one of his riddle-like sayings accuses the Philistine companions of dallying with his wife, plowing with his heifer, links up with the rich and varied imagery of eroticism associated with personified wisdom. In addition, such language of explicit sexual expectation was fully at home at harvest time, as the beautiful story about Ruth and Boaz demonstrates.
Which we didn't cover in our Deuteronomistic history.
No, we did not.
Nope.
And you weren't even here for that one.
I wasn't, but I did watch the episode.
Yeah, we it was me and Steve McRae, Kyle also, whole big piece of drama there, but we're not going to talk about it. You were doing
Kyle Kalinske?
Oh, that was during the time Ruben was gone. One of the two times.
Yeah, no,
rare.
not Kyle Kalinske.
What
Kyle
Kyle?
Curtis.
Who's Kyle Curtis?
The non sequitur show.
Oh, non
Whatever's left of
sequitur
it.
Kyle. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and also Logicked.
Oh, I was about to say, are we like name dropping Logic's first name here?
No.
I didn't remember Kyle was on the show. Purged it from my memory, I guess.
Yeah, Kyle was annoying. I know he's probably
Well,
nice
I mean-
to some people, but he dicked Ray over or whatever.
He dicked over Steve like real hard. But
Let's
we're not
not
going to
go
get into
there.
that, yeah.
No, we're not. Even though YouTube drama is so much fun.
Let's continue with the
She
Bible.
is harsh to
Or
the fool.
Sirach.
And he, well, it's in some versions of the Bible. And he that lacketh understanding abideth not in her. Like a burdensome stone is she upon him. And he is not slow in casting her off. For, as to wisdom, as her name, so is she, and not to many is she clear. Just like the phrasing of these sentences.
So, this puzzling observation that wisdom, like her name, is not manifest to the crowds sounds somewhat elitist, particularly in the Greek translation, and is not manifest to the populace. She does not appear to ordinary citizens. Finish the... Hold on.
I guess that's why they prefer kings over democratic rule.
Is that verse 22?
That was verse 22. But this next section that we're getting into, verse 23, 24, and 26, don't exist in Hebrew.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to know before we hop into it, a deity who divulged his or her name risked being controlled by magical incantation, which probably explains the story about Yahweh's reluctance to share the divine name with Moses. He wasn't really that... Well, I guess he said, I am who I am, yeah. Either way.
Well, there's this whole tradition of, like, secret names.
Yeah.
True names.
Yeah.
So, like, in Islam, they have something like a shitload of names of God, each of them with different purposes. And, like,
the Bible has a bunch of names of God, too.
Right. The Bible has different names of God, but, only one or two of them are the ones where you're like, hey, God, help me out with this right now, right here, right now, right? Whereas other traditions have more words of power, right?
Yeah. So, of course, if we're talking about words of power, the Tetragrammaton, for example.
Right. The Tetragrammaton is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And the one that I am, which was... Hebrew. Do you remember the Hebrew? I don't remember the Hebrew.
I had a note here about I'm going to cross-reference Egypt too, because in Egypt, if you had someone's name, you could, cast incantations on them. So kings often had fake names and real names, and the only people that knew the real names were them and their mother.
Yeah, well, it continues into other folklore too, like Rumpelstiltskin, definitely.
And even Lilith.
Yeah.
There's a couple Chinese myths that are really old about men who were turned to clay because they spoke their true names to an evil sorcerer.
No.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's really permeated.
Yeah. But anyway, you have more to read?
No.
Okay. For as to wisdom as her name, so is she, and not to many is she clear. Hearken, my son, and receive my judgment, and refuse not my counsel. And bring thy feet to her fetters, and into her chain thy neck. Bow down thy shoulder, and bear her, and chafe not under her bonds. So like you're carrying... You're one of those people carrying, like,
The king.
on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Also, the Ark of the Covenant, right? Bow down thy shoulder and bear her, and chafe not under her bonds. With all thy soul draw nigh unto her, and with all thy might observe her paths. Apparently, yeah, it's the same footnote. I don't know why they have it on both pages. Inquire and search, seek and find, and take hold of her, and let not go of her. For at last thou wilt find her rest, and she will be turned into delight for thee, and her net will become for thee a stay of strength, and her bonds robes of gold.
So the reference to bonds or fetters in verse 24 is difficult. The Hebrew text actually has a word for net in verse 28. Perhaps the language suggests the stocks that were used to punish uncooperative slaves, or weights that athletes employed during practice to strengthen their ankles and increase their speed. The expression may even be a rather loose way of describing the crowds that secured yokes around the necks of oxen. In any event, verse 25 continues the image of an ox willingly submitting to a yoke. And of course, the reference in verse 24 to that, Ben Sira uses this symbol for the process of getting an education. Very difficult.
All right. Inquire and search. I read that already. Okay. For at last thou wilt find her rest, and she will be turned into delight for thee, and her net will become for thee a stay of strength, and her bonds robes of gold. An ornament of gold is her yoke, and her fetters a cord of blue. See Numbers 15:38.
So apparently, this just shows you how far we've come. The expression "purple cord," not blue, purple, comes from Numbers 15:38.
I totally remember that.
39, and later played into rabbinic speculation about a deterrent from adultery. The cord becoming visible when clothes are removed, and serving as a reminder that God observes everything one does.
All right.
God's watching you.
Always.
Yep.
Yeah. With glorious garments shalt thou array thyself, and with a crown of beauty shalt thou crown thyself with her. If thou so desirest, my son, thou shalt become wise, and if thou settest thy heart thereon, thou shalt become prudent. If thou desire to it says bear, but I think they mean hear. It's just the...
Oh, yeah, the actual print.
Yeah. If thou desire to hear or bear, thou shalt receive. And if thou incline thine ear, thou shalt be wise. Definitely hear. That's a misprint. Among the multitude of elders stand thou, and whosoever is wise, cleave unto him. This verse doesn't exist in Hebrew. The following one does, though. Desire to hear every discourse, and the wise proverb, let it not escape thee. Look for him who is wise, yea, search him out diligently, and let thy foot wear out his threshold. Ponder the fear of the Most High, and his commandments think continually.
El Elyon.
Yep. And he will make wise thy heart, and give thee wisdom in whatsoever thou desirest. And that is the end of the 6th chapter.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Hey, if you're enjoying the stream so far, then
Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, share the stream around, get some, people in here chatting. Let's have a little bit of fun on this wonderful Friday evening.
Yep.
It's the afternoon for us. But I said evening.
Whatever.
Right. So first off,
there should be
evil is going to be personified in verses 1 through 2. Being capable of chasing someone and overtaking a hapless victim, or turning its back on persons who show no interest in it.
Yeah, and I think there's a long bit to introduce this entire chapter.
Well, there's a little bit. It says, interpreters generally consider this personification of evil to have been modeled on wisdom, although the reverse sequence has been proposed. This descriptive language of personification characterizes prophetic speech, too. The prophet Amos likening the fallen nation Israel to a raped virgin, Amos 5:2, and Jeremiah threatening destruction from pestilence, sword, famine, and captivity, Jeremiah 15:2. Similarly, a psalmist, not the psalmist.
Yeah, because a psalmist.
Yeah. Referred to righteousness and truth as kissing each other, Psalm 85:10.
What?
So that's all in there, and there's not really anything else. Basically, it's going to be about avoiding trouble, and I will be right back. That's why I read that right off the bat.
So while Ruben hopefully he's not getting into trouble, because I understand that he could easily fall into a perilous situation here because he has not learned how to stay out of trouble. Right?
He's got to learn.
Right, he's got to learn. And also, when you talk it to the mic, Chris.
No.
Okay. Either way. Chapter 7. Do no evil, then shall no evil come upon thee. Go far from iniquity, and it will turn from thee. Sow not in the furrows of righteousness, lest thou reap it sevenfold. So, of course, that's sevenfold imagery popping back up. And, of course, that's meant to suggest completeness. And we got that with Cain and Abel. That was the first time we saw the sevenfold repercussions. Seek not dominion from God, nor from a king a seat of honor. Justify thyself not in the sight of God, and affect not wisdom in the presence of a king. Seek not to be a ruler, lest thou be not able to suppress presumption, and thou be afraid in the presence of the mighty, and thus put a stumbling block in the way of thine integrity. Be not a cause of evil in the assembly in the gate, that thou be not cast down in the midst of the congregation. So I really think this section on humility is, yes, of course, it is about humility. In a way, it's also saying, like, don't be a sellout, too.
What verse are you on?
I just got through 7.
All right, let's talk about this.
4 through 7. Yeah.
So the most striking difference between the Hebrew and Greek texts in this unit, 1 through 17, occurs in these verses. It occurs in this verse, whatever this verse is, in I don't know what it is because they say 1 through 17, right? Whereas the Hebrew only mentions the natural decomposition of the body, worms as the destiny of evil people, the Greek translator wrote fire and worms. Critics usually see the addition of fire as evidence that Hellenism strongly influenced Ben Sira's grandson in Egypt. The Greek concept of perdition has thus invaded the thinking of pious Jews in the late 2nd century BCE, according to this view. One should probably not make so much of this textual difference, for the expectation of fire and worms as punishment for rebels against the Lord occurs already in Isaiah 66:24.
The thing is, I don't even think we've gotten to the worms yet.
Well,
I know it says
they laid it out this way.
Yeah.
But on these verses that you've just been reading, there's agricultural metaphors about sowing in the furrows of injustice and reaping a sevenfold crop. Sounds like a popular aphorism. An erotic nuance probably clung to the saying, given the customary use of the metaphor for sexual relationships and the personification of evil as a woman. What you just finished 7?
Yeah.
So in 4 through 7, the attempt by Ben Sira to dissuade young boys from aspiring to high office comes as a total surprise, for elsewhere he praises the office of sage above all other professions and states that they will serve among rulers. Martin Hengel has viewed the negative counsel against the dark background of Seleucid politics, which is characterized in the book of 2nd Maccabees as thoroughly corrupt. Where high office goes to the highest bidder and foreign control over internal Jewish decisions existed, service as judge or in any of the number of official positions would have seriously compromised an individual. The more positive advice in the latter part of the book could have arisen in an earlier period, perhaps during the Ptolemaic rule prior to 198 BCE or early in the Seleucid era, before a hostile attitude developed towards the Jews. Less probably, in verses 4 through 7, Ben Sira simply enjoins humility. Don't seek office, but be prepared to serve if it searches you out. The warning against boasting in goodness to God is calling the king's attention to your intelligence, supports the latter alternative. Verse 6 points away from that reading, suggesting that the demands of the office would be so taxing that the individual would inevitably fall. Either he would lack authority to expel wickedness, or he would be vulnerable to bribery and to the subtle influence of persons in power. This brief section concerns 4 distinct entities: God, king, judge, and people. The first 2, God and king, are brought together as supreme, heavenly, and terrestrial authorities, respectively. By Ben Sira's time, the older concept of a judge as a warrior had given way to a more modern understanding of one who pronounces verdicts in litigation, and obviously the people are the people.
Yeah.
So these are no longer the judges of judges.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally different kind of judge.
Yep. There's also a little bit, basically, they're talking about judges and eardmans, but we're all right.
Yeah. So, verse 8. Do not wickedly repeat a sin, for of the first thou art still guilty. Yeah, so you're still guilty, don't do it again. Say not, he will look upon the multitude of my gifts, and when I offer them to God Most High, he will accept them. Be not wearied in prayer, and be not behindhand in almsgiving. So that is a strange way of phrasing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're behind in almsgiving, then the priests aren't eating,
It says,
right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and be not behindhand in almsgiving, which is why it was so weird. Behindhand. Never heard that phrase before. Anyways, verse 11.
I guess it might be like, don't calculate how many alms you're supposed to pay in exchange for this sin that you're about to commit.
Sure. Despise no man who is in bitterness of spirit. Remember, there is one who exalteth and humbleth. And that being God, obviously.
Yeah.
Devise no violence against a brother, nor against a friend or companion withal. I don't know who that is, but I can't answer it right now, so I'm gonna turn that off.
I know who it is. It says so on your phone.
It does, but I don't care enough. Either way, I'm in the middle of something.
Yep.
So, delight in no lie whatsoever, for its consequence will not be pleasant. Chatter not in the assembly of princes, and repeat not thy words in prayer.
Yeah, so warnings against excessive use of epithets for God and adjectives for divine attributes occur in rabbinic literature. And Jesus is quoting as cautioning against empty repetitions in prayer, Matthew 6:7. At the same time, he teaches a model prayer to his followers and is pictured as repeating himself 3 times at prayer during his final hours in the Garden of Gethsemane.
I think it's pronounced Gethsemane, but I'm not sure. I could be very wrong.
I would think there would be an I before the E at the end.
Maybe.
Let's
I don't know.
see.
I'm sure someone can tell us.
Anyways, it's in Matthew 26:39 through 44. For Ben Sira, the proper combination seemed to have been energetic prayer followed by the dispensing of alms to the needy. So there's a little bit of liturgy that he's talking about.
Hate not laborious work, nor husbandry, for it was ordained of God. Apparently the text of this line is corrupt.
What line is it?
That is 15.
In the Hebrew text, verse 15 replaces verse 9 and belongs to the present subsection.
Okay.
Unique in subject matter, the verse reflects a viewpoint that will be explored more thoroughly in 38:24 through 39:11. Ben Sira recognizes manual labor as divinely ordained and therefore honorable. He derives this positive assessment of the work from the ancient story about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden before their sin. The changed sociological environment in the early 2nd century BCE, with the opening up of numerous professions besides farming and the commercial situation that rewarded venturesome investments, may have prompted Ben Sira to come to the defense of traditional values here.
Reckon not thyself among the sinful. Remember that wrath will not tarry. Humble altogether thy pride, for the hope of man is worms. Yeah, see, that's where the worms thing pops up. Hasten not to say, there is violence. Commit thyself unto God, and delight in his way. Yeah, I cannot wait until we get a more modern translation. Change not a friend for money, nor a natural brother for gold of Ophir. And obviously the gold of Ophir has come up so many times.
Yes, Ophir, the source of the gold that was most valued in biblical literature, was either in southern Arabia or in Egypt. It's in 1 Kings a bunch of times, Job a bunch of times. It's in Psalm.
So many places.
Yeah. About this Ophir. Ophir probably is in Arabia. Well known for gold. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing.
That's all he says.
Yeah. Despise not a wise wife, and a comely one is above pearls. Maltreat not a servant that serveth faithfully, nor a hireling who giveth himself for thee.
Yeah, so his remarks about slaves reflect both Hebraic and Greek ideas. Hebraic in the reaffirmation of the ancient legislation enjoining owners to release slaves after 6 years in Exodus 21:2 and Deuteronomy 15:12 through 15, and Greek in the comment about intelligent slaves. Have you gotten to intelligent slaves?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. There was just the note about a hireling. There was one who serves faithfully, and there was a hireling who giveth himself.
Oh,
for
read the
thee.
next verse.
Yeah, there it is. Love a wise servant as thine own self, and deny him not his freedom.
Yeah,
That's
so
kind, and that's very different. Actually,
Yeah.
no, it's not, because it's just the smart ones.
yeah, well, it says
The wise
often
ones.
Hellenistic slaves were learned educators acquired through conquest.
Yeah,
So-
still all very immoral. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Don't have slaves. That's a bad thing. Art thou possessed of a beast of burden? Art thou possessed of a beast of burden? Look after it thyself. And if it is a reliable beast, retain possession of it. If thou hast sons, correct them, and give them wives in their youth.
Yeah,
If thou
to
ha-
some degree, children and wives were understood as a man's property,
Yeah.
although this does not rule out deep affection.
Great.
Yes and no. Case by case basis.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess. If thou hast sons, correct them and give them wives in their youth. And this is hilarious here. If thou hast daughters, keep their bodies pure and be not indulgent to them.
Oh.
So,
Have sex with your daughters.
I think it's just a little bit different here. But literally, cause not thy face to shine unto them. Don't be nice to them? Do you not?
Okay.
Somehow
Verse
I
24.
interpret that as have a kid with.
There's also that possible interpretation, but verse 24 is a weird one.
Ben Sira uses a rhetorical question 4 times. Do you have cattle, children, daughters, a wife? After each question, he offers some timely advice, always from the standpoint of self-interest. Take care of valuable cattle, discipline children, protect a daughter's virginity and choose a sensible husband for her, and keep a wife whom you love. Conceivably, fathers chose husbands for their daughters without soliciting their wishes, but one can naturally assume that many young girls made their desires known.
So what?
Ben Sira will have much more to say about daughters, not all positive.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. So there's still not much explanation there to the
No,
verse
there
24, because
isn't.
if we go on, it's what you mentioned. Get thy daughter married, and worry will vanish, but bestow her on a sensible man. If thou hast a wife, abhor her not, but one that hateth thee, trust not. With thy whole heart honor thy father, and forget not thy mother who bore thee in travail.
So
Obviously, you know.
So 27 and 28 don't appear in Hebrew. They were probably omitted through a scribal error after the scribe wrote with the whole heart in verse 27. His eye may have fallen on the similar phrase in verse 29. The sentiment expressed in these verses moves from the greater to the lesser. Your parents gave life to you. How can you ever match that gift?
I didn't ask for this. Remember that through them thou wast begotten, and how canst thou recompense them for what they have done for thee? With all thy heart fear God and reverence his priests.
Yeah, the social status of priests varied over the centuries. Because of competing sacerdotal families? Sacerdotal.
Yeah.
That's a word. Sacerdotal families, the rise to power of one group naturally marked the decline of another in rank and privilege. 1 Samuel 3:10 through 14. The Levites endured this kind of demotion at one time, prompting the author of the book of Chronicles to come to their defense. Similarly, the family of Abiathar had fallen from royal favor in earlier days, 1 Kings 2:26 through 27. It follows that one can hardly describe all priests as privileged, although their status had certainly risen considerably during Ben Sira's time.
With all thy strength, love him that made thee, and forsake not his ministers. Glorify God, and honor his priest, and give them their portion as thou art commanded. The food of the trespass offering and the heave offering of the land, the sacrifices of righteousness and the offerings of holy things. So, it's all very Leviticus.
Yeah, what verse are you on right now?
31. I just finished 31.
Okay, he urges his readers to obey biblical legislation with respect to supporting priests.
Mm-hmm.
The two verbs, pachad and kabed, imply awe and high regard, respectively. An ancient epithet for Yahweh was the fear of Isaac, Genesis 31:42. Although an alternative translation of pachad yishchak as kinsman of Isaac is also possible. Either rendering of the phrase emphasizes Yahweh's protection of Isaac in different times of danger. I didn't hear Isaac in there, right?
No. I also did not hear Isaac in there.
That's really weird.
So I'm sure that once we have a different translation,
Then we might see it,
yeah.
maybe. But I haven't heard that the fear of Isaac was another epithet for Yahweh.
I think it came up once. I think I remember it once, yeah. Either way. And also to the poor stretch forth thine hand, that thy blessing may be full. Acceptable is a gift to every living man, and also from the dead without not kindness. What? Oh, sorry. And also from the dead withhold not kindness. Okay. That makes way more sense.
Yeah, the positive evaluation of offerings to the dead is surprising. For in the funerary cult fell into disfavor quite early in Israelite history. Nevertheless, ancient and venerable practices such as this one survived through the centuries because of strong feelings for departed loved ones. One explanation for idolatry points to a parent's grief over a lost child and the desire to have a reminder in tangible form. You can see in the Wisdom of Solomon 14:15. The cult, widely practiced among Greeks and Romans, persisted into Christian times. According to F.X. Murphy, catacombs of St. Sebastian have yielded a banquet room with graffiti on the walls, signifying that pilgrims had satisfied a vow by celebrating a memorial banquet in honor of Saints Peter and Paul. The Greek text tones down the reference to a cult of the dead, turning the remark into an admonition to attend burial rites, so important to the pious Tobit.
Wow, that flipped later.
And we will read Tobit.
Eventually.
But like the whole idea of death veneration and dead veneration flipped much later.
Yeah.
Like if you look to the 11th century, everything about what they're saying now, they kind of just said, nah, that's not true.
Either way, shun not the sorrowful and mourn with the mourners. Omit not to visit the sick, because for this thou wilt be loved. In all thy doings, remember thy latter end. Then wilt thou never act basely.
No.
Well, you know what? We just finished it.
Put that on the table and then rolled it off.
It fell over. My bad.
Ah, dude, your hand definitely dragged it. I watched.
Either way, that's unless there was some commentary on those last few verses.
No commentary on those last few verses.
Well, I guess that is the end of the reading then.
Yeah, that's the end of today's reading. What did you think of today's reading from Sirach?
The chapter 4 was pretty boring.
Yeah.
That was not that much fun.
I liked chapter 5 and 6.
Yeah.
I didn't love them.
Yeah.
I think there was some interesting stuff in this last chapter too.
Yeah, there was a little bit of fun stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
a little bit of fun stuff. All right.
Overall, Sirach is kind of more of the same. I mean, while we're reading Proverbs, right?
Yeah.
Which I think we'll be through with Proverbs before we're done with Sirach.
Maybe. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, it's a shorter book, I think. But
It'll work
anyways,
itself out.
Yeah, we didn't mention to anyone that we have a $666 donation drive going on right now.
That's true. We do.
Yep.
Yeah. Once we hit $666, we will be getting a Thetan meter.
Yep, we'll
or
be
an
seeing
e-meter,
who's
whatever.
the most clear.
Yes.
We're going to take it apart. We're going to see if we can cheat it. We're going to see who's the best Scientologist.
And also the alchemy drive that we had before, we did hit that goal.
Yep.
And we're just kind of waiting to get the stuff that we need
Yep.
in the current global
Whenever
situation.
society is ready for us.
Yep. I mean, maybe someday we'll be able to get easily found goods again. Maybe. But until that day,
Yeah,
well,
see, we have some other stuff going
yeah.
on too.
yeah. We also have a Patreon.
We do have Patreon.
You can go on Patreon. You can pay $1 a month, and you can get a whole bunch of scripts, including that script that you just wrote.
Yes. So I finished the script, and I'm currently working on the video for the canonization of First Enoch in the Ethiopian Church.
And I'm sure that you'll have a lot of fun stuff to talk about with the Ethiopian Church. I mean, that guy that we brought up,
Zara Jacob, yeah.
Zara Jacob.
Yeah.
His arguments were just kind of insane.
Yeah.
Right?
There are a lot of really weird arguments. There is an argument. Okay, so some of the canon lists don't include First Enoch, right? One of them is the Fetha Nagast. And the Fetha Nagast is the law of the kings. It was pretty much just the standard legal code in Ethiopia for a very long time. It was brought in from somewhere else, but it was adopted in Ethiopia. And it actually includes a canon list. That list does not include Enoch. And even so, people still accepted Enoch. So there's this really bad apologetic as like in a later 20th century commentary on the Fetha Nagast. There was a bad apologetic pretty much saying, if we included it, people would, be questioning us about about their knowledge. Like philosophers would be like, they don't question us or anything. That's why they included Enoch in there. And apparently, in order to not have that argument, in order to just,
Table it forever.
Yeah, exactly. In order to do that, the apostles didn't, and the saints, the fathers, they didn't include First Enoch in the canon list.
Well, there's also the apologetic that Enoch has to be included because if you don't have Enoch, then how do you know anything?
Right,
how do you know how any of the universe functions? Enoch's the one that talks about like where the sun goes at night.
Yeah, exactly. That was Zara Jacob's thing,
Yeah.
and I do quote that. There is a good amount of stuff.
I'm sure it'll be a great video, which you all can go check out when it comes out. But
Yeah, so for $1 a month, you could get the script for that, and plus all the other scripts for our documentaries. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And for $5 a month, you can get,
All of our published books, and
according
so
to
far
your
it's one.
evidence, unicorns exist.
yeah, so far it's that one, but it could be more in the future. It will be more in the future.
Yep. And for $10, you
Entered into a T-shirt giveaway, which we will be doing the T-shirt giveaway on Sunday.
this Sunday.
Yes. So if you are not already a $10 patron, you can become a $10 patron and you can get entered into the T-shirt giveaway.
And for 20, or was it 25?
20.
It's 20. For $20, you also...
you get all that stuff.
Yeah. You get all that stuff. You get invited to potential live stuff that we do
Yeah, and
someday.
hangouts as
Patreon
well.
hangout.
Yep.
Yeah.
For
And then
$50,
yeah,
you can get on this show or our Sunday show.
Yeah.
Or
Coming
Yeah.
Saturday show.
coming Saturday show. And for $10,000 a
Oh,
month,
yeah, this one.
once the quarantine ends, one of us will come out and give you a high five or a handshake or something and then promptly go
Your
home
choice.
Yeah.
within the continental United States.
That's what you get for $10,000.
Yep.
Let's see what else.
We might also sign something.
Yeah, we could sign a thing.
But only if you have a pen on you.
Not bringing one.
We're not bringing one.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous. We're just leaving right away and doing that.
Yeah,
no suitcase, nothing.
We scheduled a flight out of the airport 5 minutes after our flight gets into the airport.
Meet us there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got going on. We got our Amazon wish list. Link is in the description.
Yeah.
Lots of books on there. So if you want to help us out with this table, or if you want to help us out with our research for other videos, wish list is there.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got going on. Facebook and Twitter, free to follow us there, absolutely. And Teespring, wacky and fun shirts on Teespring.
Yeah, wacky and fun T-shirts. You can get yourself a mug too.
Yeah, that is still on there. Yeah,
you can drink yourself some coffee. You can drink your coffee while you're watching this show in your Milwaukee Atheist T-shirt. You can you can drink your coffee. Are there other things on there? Is there like a mouse pad?
No
mouse
There's
pad.
a hoodie.
A hoodie. You can wear a Milwaukee Atheist hoodie above your Milwaukee Atheist T-shirt while drinking out of your Milwaukee Atheist mug while watching Milwaukee Atheist.
Represent.
Yep.
I think that's all the stuff pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we'll also give you bonus points if you make altars to us and worship us.
That's just a bonus, though.
Yeah, it's just a bonus.
Anyways, thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you on Sunday.